Welcome! Well, that sounds like the Frankie Goes to Hollywood intro. Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie.
And Mackie.
Yes.
What?
That's
What?
Hey, I said both of them at the same time. On WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where it's more than just radios. To jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 411.
110 and 400. Finally, it works. Great.
It's also the day where it's a palindrome. This is 02022020.
Palindromes. I like palindromes.
Okay, so it's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris's show, well, there's a way of being able to... It's just between you and me, there's a way of being able to listen to it, even if you did miss it. But I'll fill you in. She had on her show, she had Steve Colburn, and they were talking about alien implants and abductions and a whole bunch of other really, really cool stuff, which is fantastic. So if you did miss her show with Steve and you love those topics, you can catch up your lost regrets, for shame, and simply subscribe to the archives for $5 US a month. Now, that's all it really takes. It doesn't take much, right? That, for me, that's what I think, a double coffee or something similar to that here. Maybe it's a triple. I don't know anymore. I just say a large. Is that venti? No, large is large. There's a very funny joke around that. Paul Rudd does that. I have to tell you that Mackie and I live in Australia. You might have noticed with our accents, Mackie's accent, it's a little more generalized, whole planet generalized accent. To be honest, it's less the "g'day, mate." It's less Australian than... Oh, well, I'm less Australian than that. I'm
Not true. I was voted most ochre 2018, 5th year running, by me.
50, right? Cobber. G'day, Cobber.
On ya, mate, right?
Mate. Yeah, and you know what? The Australian language is built of expletives, so, you know, with every second word could be one. Just letting you know. We're not going to say them on air. But since we live in Australia, we have these accents as a result of living here. We do something, and that is respect the elders, past, present, and emerging in our respective areas. For me, it is the Darkinjung and Mackie.
It's the Daruk people.
Mm-hmm. And their significant amount of time as a single civilization, non-conquered by anyone else, of course, until white men turn up. For shame on us. 80,000 plus years, and every time we find something else, like Mungo Man, for instance, it just... The years keep going up, the decades, that it is crazy. In tens of thousands of years it's been going up. I remember it was 10,000 years or 20,000 years when I grew up, and it was just some kind of wild guess, right? We're at 80,000 years. It's probably more than that. It's probably 120,000 years, something. We just haven't found an artifact. All right? Most things don't fossilize, and it's really tough to get one unless there's a catastrophe, and then something's, silted over, a body's silted over, and the any kind of predators weren't able to take the body away and consume it in some way or whatever, right? So that's really tough. Fossilization is a rarity, to be honest. But you know what? That's the interest. That's the interest. Goodness me, I don't know where I'm going to put my teeth back in. That is the intro done for this show, for show 411, in which we'll be talking about, Mackie.
We are going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but most, it's timely biological weapons. we spoke about this a long time ago. In fact, 300 shows ago was the last time we spoke
My
about biological
goodness,
weapons.
no, really.
I know. So the show text is significantly updated. There's still component parts that were relevant then, and we're talking like I said, 300 shows ago. It's 4 or 5 years now, 5 years in fact. 2014.
It's yesterday.
But yesterday, just like yesterday. But the focus back then was on Ebola. The content, though, and the alarming things that came out of it haven't changed. And I think something we said last time, I didn't actually go back and listen to the show, but something that I think we said was all the things that were happening then and leading up to it, up to 2014, would take some time to bear fruit, and had borne fruit at the time, and now bearing fruit. And I'm talking specifically about the suspicious deaths of a raft of microbiologists, roughly 100. We have listed the most interesting cases for you. And look, everybody dies, right? And you should, so what, Mackie? Big deal. The thing is this, though. If so many accidents and murders and suicides happen to one particular group of people, or profession, I should say, people within a profession, it does raise your hackles, and you should think, that's odd, especially in such a short span of time. And it did raise our suspicion, and we're going to talk about that in context of the coronavirus. So today, the news is actually blending in with the show. The topic, as it were. We might mention a couple of things that have happened other than the coronavirus outbreak, but the majority of the show, and then ongoing show cycle, because we got about 30-odd pages, 35 pages, Dave, of biological warfare.
Yep.
But we will certainly. It's going to be a bit of a mixed bag. We will get into the show pretty quickly. There are some news items which we should talk about very quickly. I mean, the most important one, well, two. There are really two items which are really, really important, right? One, Trump is set for acquittal because, like we said, the Senate is owned by Congress, and now they've voted against witnesses.
Right.
The senators. So think of the senators not as jurors. Think of the senators as judges. Each senator is a judge. It's about 100 judges, right? Mm-hmm. And because the powers they have, and it's completely not the power at all, or the way a jury would be made up. So there's 100 senators, and consider each one a judge. So the senators voted, because the Republicans have the majority, overwhelmingly not to call witnesses. Because in a trial, why would you need witnesses? That's just silly. So that's not happening. But Bolton's book, which I think is close to being published, but can't be published yet because certain things have to be redacted, has mentioned, he's the eyewitness or the ear witness to what Trump is alleged to have said to the Ukrainians and so forth, but that testimony is not going to happen. So Trump is most likely to, but look, Dave, you and I, we always said it, that he would be acquitted. That wasn't going to happen, right? I mean, he wouldn't be the first president ever to be impeached, to actually have him be removed from office, due to impeachment. It couldn't happen, possibly. I'll let you talk to that in a second. The other piece of news is, of course, that the United Kingdom, Great Britain, whatever you want to call them, have exited the European Union. That's a huge. Well, it's interesting.
Yay for them.
Well,
I know, right?
It's a mixed bag.
It's such a prickly subject.
I know. And the thing is this, if you look at the timing of things that have happened in the last 2 weeks, and I'm talking about number one, the trade war with China, the status of the negotiations, the fact that there was an impeachment trial against Trump in the Senate, the timing of the coronavirus outbreak, as well as the fact that North Korea has now completely withdrawn from any nuclear agreements that they had with Trump initially. Yep. But nobody actually spent any time looking at that. Nobody, because it's just not.
It got to the bottom of all of the news.
Yeah,
it's not a priority.
And then, of course, the death of Kobe Bryant, tragic, but not world moving, but tragic. He was an influencer. I think he was a good role model for a lot of kids.
He was.
I think he did a lot of great things. Look, but it's always tragic when people that have the means do good things die. So he had the means and he was doing good things, and then now he's dead. That's always a tragedy. We lose the people that can make a difference, and not just can, but actually do go out there to make a difference. But Dave, you have any thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, heaps.
Yeah.
But I'll keep them really slim. The Trump thing, I've been watching that the whole time, and yes, you're right, Becky. It was not a surprise that that they didn't want to show any witnesses. I think that was voted down 49-51. That's almost a margin call, but I think that was two people across the floor. Otherwise, it still would have been a majority anyway. Just saying, the last thing that the opposition to Trump would want is, to be honest, is anything that implicates their next leader in any wrongdoing. Also, I think this is the same. It's the same as getting in trouble yourself for dobbing in someone else for a different thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think that they maybe blindly or willingly have ventured down this path of, in every attempt to bring Trump unhinged, but look what they're working with. I think it's a difficult position that they put themselves in, and they're just sniping now with almost nothing to go on. I think if that's the best they had, good luck. Honestly, good luck. Wait till you're in power. Because if that's it, remember the first person, was it Nixon, but although he resigned, was just the deleting of a recording. Yeah? And everything that I've seen that Trump had done that they're calling out was bad. Even, deposition from the Ukrainian president showed that there wasn't anything in it. And it was really null and void. It was a no. It's really a no case, right? A judge would go, well, I'll hear it, but I really don't think there's any merit in pursuing it, to be honest. However, due process and, public servants and I wonder if, getting paid to pursue it against the president was a thing. I don't know how many people you got employed in doing this, but, if employment's the thing that you're looking for, then, good on you. I really have no say. I didn't vote in the US elections, and I hope that the listeners have, and that entitles them to a voice in which way this should go. There's a kookaburra. Oh,
nice.
Yeah, I hope you guys hear that. We really are in Australia, by the way. I'm just saying. The other one was Brexit. Okay. The reason why I said yay. The reason I could turn off the tape. Yeah. The reason why I said yay to Brexit is because this is the story that never died. It just kept going and going and going. It's like the war on terror. If one day, right, Fox News or CNN decides to say, you know what, there's no more terror, you're going to say yay. I've been watching the Brexit thing for so long, I don't know what to do with myself. Now, look at all the time I've just recovered. That's fantastic. But, they're going to milk this thing for a whole year and, talking about policy, and I don't really care anymore. I lost faith maybe about a month in, and then I was watching it like a train wreck. They changed governments because of it. Well, it's here now. Good luck. But what happens to Britain as a whole is the next thing I think we have to keep our eye on. What's it going to mean? 47 years effectively in a trade union, no, that's not the word, trade agreement as the EU. It's existed for that long. So what happens now? I wonder. It's going to be interesting. So, Scotland and the rules around travel, I think that's going to be a thing. I think trade is going to be an issue. Will Ireland be entirely protected by its own new tax laws? I don't know.
The,
I don't know how it's
the
going to
biggest impact is going to be the banking sector. You see, that the problem is, and in fact, it already started probably last year, the year before, when this Brexit came on the cards. A lot of the British banks withdrew from Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And a lot of banks, international banks, withdrew from the City of London because it and then moved to Frankfurt. I think it was one center they went to. I can't remember what the other one was. Maybe Paris. But the point is that that'll hit UK really hard. Another thing are the regulations and restrictions around border trade and then goods across the borders. It's going to be very difficult. But having said that, they're now in a pole position to become a primary trading partner with the US potentially, and for some things potentially edging out China, which of course is facing its own problems right now, and something we're going to talk about, I guess, is the economic impact of the coronavirus in a second. But yeah, Dave, look, it's I agree with you.
To add to the coronavirus, baby, and I'll send you the link so you're prepared when I start talking about it. Oh my God! Right, good luck.
Yeah, I know about that one. That one. It's actually avian. Just started. It just now, and it's right next to it.
Yeah,
yeah, I know.
And hence the reason for the show today.
Yeah, but there's one item of news that I came across today or yesterday. I can't remember. My days sort of blend into each other, and I don't know if anybody else is aware of this. But I like animals, right? And when I was a lot younger, I wanted to become a zoologist. So I've got a keen interest. Yeah, look, I was always interested, right, in the natural world. I loved watching documentaries. So I just ate that stuff up. I had all the books. But today, something happened that hasn't happened to me in a long time. Now, I don't profess to know everything. There's a few things I know, but this thing came out of, like, to me, it was just like the discovery of a new large ape. Today or yesterday, again, like I said, I can't remember when, I was made aware of the existence of an animal called the maned wolf, right? And it's the largest canid of South America. It looks a little bit like a fox, but it's a lot bigger, and it is neither a fox nor a wolf. In fact, it's the only species in the genus Chrysosion or Chrysico. And it weighs between 20 and 30 kilos and reaches up to 90 centimeters at the withers. Now, the way I found it was actually in the Mandela Effect Forum. And when I saw it, it looked to me like a cryptid, right? It really did. In fact, a little bit like a chupacabra, if you imagine it a bit more mangled and dehydrated. But I had never heard of the maned wolf. I don't know, Dave, are you familiar with the maned wolf?
It's avoided me entirely, Becky.
And it has a mane, not quite as large and luscious as a lion, but it does. But the rest of the body looks like a fox.
Timber wolf, Becky, I suppose.
Except the body is very slender and the legs are almost deer-like. I will send you the link because I need you to look at it. It is just, like I said, I had no idea this thing existed. Is it residue? Is it a Mandela effect, or is it just a gap in my education? At this point, I'm going to go with gap in my education. But again, it's the largest canid, right? Not the smallest in South America, and I just never ever had come across it. So that's just a little observation here from me, out of the Twilight Zone. It's just nuts. But yeah, to me it looked like a completely. If you look at the picture, Dave, that I sent you the link.
Yeah.
It's such an unlike. It looks like a fox with a mane and really, really long legs.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just flabbergasted, and I thought I'd just share this with you, my listeners. It's one of those things. But hopefully in the chat, someone can tell me, Mackie, everybody knows the
everybody
maned wolf.
knows that.
It's the state animal for some state.
For some state. So for those people who watch this on YouTube, I'm just putting up an image of it now, if I can possibly do that.
It completely floored me, I'll be honest. And something we didn't mention earlier, I think Solaris is an accomplished author. I'm just on her page on Amazon, and you can get 5 of her books on Amazon.
Yeah. Awesome.
So So please go ahead and do that. It's awesome. It's good. Mr. Sun and the Halloween Ball, Eye of the Remote, Black Operations and Ares 152, Transmutation through Ascension, Soul of the Sun, 1 million miles till midnight, Between the Mirror and the Lens, and of course programmed by Deception, Eye of the Remote 2 or Series 2, and all by Solaris Blue Raven. If you're,
she's awesome, by the way.
I know that's going real well here. Solaris, congratulations. That's brilliant stuff. But yeah, and Dave, of course, also is a published author. Go on.
Go on. Plug your book. I can dance on cue too. Hey,
dance, man. Dance.
And I've seen Mechie dance too. That's funny. I don't know what it was. It was like a cha-cha or something that you're doing that time. Most recently too. That was really funny. So my book is Visitors, a Lifetime of something or other.
It's your book. Experience?
Yeah, it is. Just Google something like that and that'll come up. Hey, it doesn't. A Lifetime of Experiences. Visitors, a Lifetime of Experiences. And it's not talking about guests that have overstayed their welcome. It's not that.
Oh, you're still here. Go away, Bob.
Yeah. Oh, my fridge is empty. You need some more food. Yeah. So that's when you have a second fridge hidden that they don't know about. That's happened in my life, but that's not what I've written about. It's about my paranormal phenomena in my life. Now, Mechie, I just came from the Tuggerah Lakes UFO Society meeting today, which I don't attend as regularly as I should, and it was very interesting. Some of the things, Mechie, that we talk about here are spoken about there. They were talking about the bushfires and the current state of things, and is it possibly, is HAARP weaponized? What's that? Why is it all of a sudden all these things are happening? Why is the world gone the way it's gone and in the direction it's going in? And I did say the words nation state, but I put an if in front, Mechie, to be honest. I said, look, there's a lot of talk about it, and there's photographs that have appeared on the internet with all these main fires all around, and that's in lots of different countries where people have taken a photo and it appears as though there's a beam of light coming down from the sky where the fire is, or maybe it started the fire and it's been captured on film digitally. And I said, well, look, if it was possible, which it could be, for a motive to do it, because motive's one thing. Let's just move that aside for a minute. Let's look at the technology. Is there a technology that could do it? Absolutely, without doubt. Not HAARP, but possibly something that's been launched into, low Earth orbit could do it. They're talking about having mirrors, being able, so if you have sunlight on a surface and you get a mirror and shine onto that surface another copy of that light coming from the sun, then you're going to increase the amount of kilojoules on that surface. So it's possible, just with mirrors, but let alone there being some kind of, groovy technology that, you'd be able to, beam high energy weapons down to something. It's not been declared, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, when I said it, then I tried to identify what actors they would be, and I mentioned nation state. There was a couple that took great offense to that, and I apologize profusely, not meaning them in particular. They didn't appear to me to have any origins in a nation state. However, I'm still apologetic, and I didn't mean to offend anybody. I was just setting up a scenario in which you had an opposition country, and today, if I said the USSR, that would be incorrect. If I said Russia, there'd have to be something something connected, more motive orientated, and if there was any country on the planet today that might have any cause or motive to do anything, I would probably suggest nation state. Otherwise, look, if Iran had access to the technology, possibly. There's a long list that the Allies have aggravated as, like, you know, putting a stick into an ant's nest over the last 25 years. So it could have been any one of them. I just chose one because nation state is a foreign actor is an easy description. And I'm not being specific to a single country. That could have been North Korea, right? But they just don't have the dollars or the means to do anything, right? The people eat grass clippings. You know, what can I do? So I apologize in advance. I've just aggravated more and more people by trying to describe myself out of it. But look,
honestly, to be honest with you, Dave, I have no idea what you are talking about at all. I mean, you were so obscure that I don't know what nation state player you're referring to. I'm suspecting maybe the States, maybe China, but clearly that would completely kill your apology, right?
Exactly. I tried, right? Because I didn't say the country. I said maybe China, right? I said maybe. Right. But look, it offended them so much that I think they left because of that, or my further opinions. And I do apologise. If you want to, talk to me again, I'm open to that. I had no, I would not. There's no malice in it, and I'm not racist. I'm just saying, technical. And I backed it up, Mackie, by saying, in the tech world, nation-state hacking is a thing, and the IP addresses have led to China. So just saying it is a thing, and and I don't hate anyone, right? That I work shoulder to shoulder with people from all around the world. I'm not a racist.
Shoulder to shoulder, but I would never turn my back on them.
That's funny.
Just threw you in that hole.
So look, that's what I wanted to mention about that, Mackie. But I tell you, all the conversations were really interesting. And if you're ever in the Tuggerah area, or you're interested on Facebook, just check it out, Tuggerah Lakes UFO. And
isn't that the group that was going to get government funding that was then revoked?
I remember that current affair episode. Yes, yes, it was.
I mean,
funny because I was on that, Mackie.
Yeah, I know. I know, right? But the thing is this: look, people have different hobbies, right, and have different interests. And I think unless it's a criminal activity, right, any hobby is as good as the next. Any activity is as good as the next. If people are interested in having fun. Personally, I think cricket is a complete waste of time. I know it's very un-Australian, but if somebody asks me which sport should we abolish, cricket, number 1, 2, and 3 on my list. But again, it's my opinion. On
Sri Lankans,
but the same token,
Indians, Pakistan,
right?
England, and Australia are all against you, right?
That's okay, I'll live. But the point is that,
and the New Zealanders, by the way, sorry,
that's my opinion. But just because that's my opinion doesn't mean they shouldn't get funding. So similarly, if you believe that if you follow the UFO phenomenon, and it is a phenomenon, no one is arguing there is a phenomenon, because we've called it something. It's unidentified flying object, sometimes unidentified submerged objects, USOs. So the phenomenon is real enough. But everybody else then makes the leap to say, these are just spacecraft, alien spacecraft. No one is saying that. We're calling them UFOs for a reason. They're unidentified. We're not calling them identified alien spacecraft, right? It would be IAS. They're called UFOs, not IASs.
That's
right?
a new thing,
right? Yeah. And it's interest group. So I think they have as much right to put their hand up for funding as any other group out there, especially now that I've learned that Australia funded an artist that peed in a bucket for art.
Yeah.
I'm peeing in a bucket for art. If we're funding that, I think we got a few bucks for a UFO group. Okay,
Mackie, if I'd known that the grant was going to be given out for that.
Yeah, I know.
It's a whole new vocation right there.
And here I'm using my brain like a sucker.
Using
my bladder.
Do you know what? it's quite amusing. So the Gosford Files, which was a mass sighting in this region where I live, it was called the Gosford Files. That was what the money was initially, the grant was initially given for, just a laptop and a projector to be able to project to the audience. Otherwise, they were just seated meetings with some minutes. That was all. And we got the funding for the group, which I wasn't part of then. But it's very funny. It's very Becky. But you know what? That's when you say, government funding for organisations where people just want to have fun. This week saw our poor government embroiled in the middle of probably one of the most amazingly obvious sports grants rorting that's probably ever been visible in the public eye from the government. And they gave away more than $100 million in grants to sporting communities. However, there was a sporting body that looked over the top of this and accepted all of the applications for grants, provided a priority list of who should be receiving the grant, who shouldn't be, and they valued them in a priority system, and they gave it to the government, who was just turning up for an election, and they said, hey, well, some of these are in marginal seats, so we should just spend the money on them. We can buy some votes with this. It'd be awesome. And the Prime Minister said, when questioned, I wasn't part of this, but an email has come to light this week that he was actually asked a question and he agreed to the context of the spend. And that's just... Look, I'm not surprised. That's my problem, that I'm not surprised. The fact that they did it, I just expect pretty much every politician in that era of politics. The young people, maybe not so much. The ones that were, I don't know, they get up and goers who just want to make big change. But those, the dyed-in-the-wool public servants, I'm not blaming public servants, but the ones that are politicized, that just, I don't know, they're only in it for the party. They don't care about the people, whatever that is.
In the trough. That's what
the trough. They've got their snouts in the trough. Those people don't really care about the civilization they live in, just perpetuating their position. And I think that's if there was ever a change, that's the change that could be made. That we prevent that from happening.
Yeah, look. I'm not surprised either, Dave. And the truth is that people will always act in their own self-interest, and in this case, the party's self-interest, right? I got $100 million, Bob. Ooh, Jane, that's awesome. Oh, you mean like a slush fund? Yeah, we can do whatever we want with this. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Let's do whatever we want with it. The funny thing is this. There are two things I want to say to this. One of the clubs that the minister, was a member of, received funding against, even though it was fairly low on the recommended list, but it received it, right? I mean, fair enough. I mean, I get that. That I get, right? Because it's my club. So I promised them I would do something from them. They voted for me, so here it is, right? I understand that. Mm-hmm. Buying votes, that's a very different kind of proposition. So if you are making good on an election promise, that's cool, right? Yeah. It's your constituency, and then you said, hey, when I get in power, I make sure that we're going to get this funding for this club. I have no issue with that, but that was big hoo-ha. But no, that's fine by me because that's an election promise, and that's in fact that's the job of the member of parliament to make sure that their electorate gets what they need. They're the representative person, for that electorate. Yeah. The other stuff, though, that's the problem when it becomes along party lines and winning votes and a majority and using public money, right? Not so much for election promises, but in you can call it bribery, if you will, right? Because it is borderline bribery, right? The other thing that's funny, though, and I watched there was a panel discussion on TV the other night on, I think, ABC, and it might have been The Drum, but I could be wrong. And they were discussing this very topic. And the host is a pretty cool guy, bald and wears shorts all the time anyway. But the point is that you ask these questions of these people, right? And one person, I think it was a reporter, was really, getting stuck into the minister and saying that she shouldn't have done it, this and that. And a couple of other panel members did as well. There was another panel member, and I didn't know who she was, right? And he turned, and she was sort of taking the side of the minister. Look, once you're in there, it's ministerial prerogative to override it, and it's election promises. And she was really making a case for the person. Later in the piece, I learned that she was a former sports minister who again the same thing.
So it might be systemic.
It's funny.
You know.
Oh no, it is absolutely systemic. And if we assume anything else, we're fools. The system that we inhabit is completely corrupt and it's beyond repair. People say we should go into the system, change it from the inside. It's impossible to change the system from the inside. It has become completely impossible. Once in a while, you have to just kick over the apple cart and see how many apples you can still use afterwards. It just isn't possible to change the system.
There'd be very little left. Becky, do you know she's resigned?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, news just came through. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'm not surprised because it became untenable.
Well, do you know what that does? That's the scapegoat, so that the Prime Minister is unaffected by this.
Oh, of course. Oh, see, I've taken action. She's gone. I've told her to resign.
That's right.
I told her to do that. So, look, we are living in a highly broken system, and so much so that most politicians no longer make the right decisions for the nation state they inhabit. Certainly in Australia, that's the case. Our politicians are very much in the pockets of big business, the resource sector, meaning mining, coal, oil, gas exploration, these things, and in fact, the foreign interests as well. We are selling our resources off so cheaply to the detriment of our internal national supply. We are paying more for resources than we are selling them for.
They just doubled,
and there's a shortage.
The gas allowance for Australia now, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's
for some reason.
It's insane, though.
Profitable.
Yeah, it is more profitable, right? But actually, no, it's not. It is not more profitable to sell it. In fact, we're selling it at a loss. We are paying more for the gas. Let's focus on that for example for a second here. We're paying more for gas than we're selling it for internally, right? And in fact, we're selling more than we have, or really sensibly should sell, because it causes shortages in Australia. And it's a completely mismanaged country that we inhabit. And I know a lot of you believe that we are mythical, we don't exist, we're just part of the, the flat Earth ice edge.
So,
right?
It's clearly doing it pro bono.
Clearly. That's pro bono crisis actor. Put it in my resume, that. No, but it's a shame. It's a crying shame. I mean, other countries much less gifted with natural resources are doing a lot better than we are, and education is free, health is free. I'm thinking of Iceland, places like that up in Scandinavia. But yeah, look, that's what it is. Those are the news. Look,
except for coronavirus update.
No, that's where we're now. Coronavirus. So coronavirus, what is it? We're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to talk about population reduction agendas here as well. That's actually what I'm going to start off with once. But the coronavirus has hit, and it hit pretty hard. And we said this, I think, last show or the show before, that the infection rate looks exponential, and it was now confirmed. We're going to talk about a study that was undertaken by scientists in Hong Kong. In fact, the local equivalent of the CDC, and it was published in the Lancet just recently. So we're going to talk about that as well. And in fact, they have modeled that the outbreak will double in size every 6.4 days. Mm-hmm. They also have different numbers for the total number of infected. But yes, it started hard. It started quick. I think we missed the boat completely. We acted not quick enough, and now we are responding very slowly as well. And I think all the measures we put in place are insufficient. The one thing that worries me the most, Dave, are the cases in India.
Yes,
I've been to India, and I look, India is India. It's a beautiful mishmash of chaos, and I just don't know that the Indian nation is equipped to deal with an outbreak of this nature.
Could you imagine being able to do anything like closing a city down? I don't think it'd be even possible.
No, I don't think it would be. You're right. I mean, cities are massive, and not only that, but a lot of poor people live in these massive cities, in slums that are huge, like hundreds of thousands of people. And I don't know how you could control. I don't think you can control it. So that's my worry. But do you have any before I start on the population reduction kick on? Any insights you want to give us to the coronavirus?
Yeah. Cool. All right. So the current total as of just now, and this is the current the numbers I'm going to use from now here on in are only going to be those that are officially reported numbers, not the ones that we've spoken about in the past and not that we'll cover a bit later on. But 14,568 is today's current infected total. And when I looked at the amount of change of the numbers, Meki, going back to the 20th of January, where there was a change from the reported, say, 282 people only, back on the 20th, to now where there's 14,500. Well, the change has grown like this. So from the 21st, I won't read the dates, just the number: 48, 221, then down to 92, 277, 1,084, 700, 1,700, 1,600, 1,700, 2,000, 1,500, now 3,368. So that's the amount of change per day. And that's why we're saying exponential. I've got some graphs on the screen for the people who are on YouTube, showing both the China and the world curves are extremely similar. Though the numbers are smaller, they're still extremely similar in their shape. They're still showing or scaling on an exponential scale. The net results are also scaling on a very same scale, though those numbers are extremely small comparatively against those who are currently infected. So if we're talking about 14,568 currently infected in the world, the outpatients, the people who have come out of the back of the virus, either in a recovered state or they've passed away, is only 645. But if I wind the number of, if I wind back the date back to something like when there was around about 639 people infected, that's back on the 23rd of January. So given the amount of days since then, which is about maybe looking about 9 days, in those 9 days from 600 to 14,568, only those 9 days ago are we talking about the numbers where you see the death toll and the recovered tolls. Does that make sense? So back then there was 600 and something people. Since then, we've got still 14,000 or 13,900 and something who are still with the virus right now. So when you see the mortality rate, you've got to realize that these people suffered for at least a week or more with the virus and either got better or passed away. And that's why I'm going back to the 23rd and saying this is the roundabout, roughly the same amount of people who have currently exited the virus. The people in the bulge of the virus, the people who are still experiencing it. There's something else, Meki, that I need to point out. So in Germany, there was a person who flew from China back on the 6th, I think it was, or something like that. They flew into Germany and they conducted a seminar, 4-day seminar. They shared the air conditioning with those people. They spoke. There was, coffee and meals. They stayed in a hotel, and there was, heaps of people that stayed with them. Now, 2 of those people in that course, one for 4 days, one for 2 days, both contracted the virus from that person that came from China and then flew back to China. But the whole time the conference is on, that person that was there had no symptoms. None. Upon landing in China again, that person, the presenter, went, wow, I don't feel very well, and got tested and was proven to have the virus. Rang the convention center and said that I've had the virus. I didn't know I had it, but I've got it now. Test everyone, and they tested 2 people that eventually proved positive, and they're the people in the study. They found that once there was a couple of days before they started showing symptoms, then they were tested and proven they'd caught it. They'd caught the virus. Now, there was a coffee vendor or something like that they were associating with during their time there, those 2 visitors, and they passed it on to those people as well before they were presenting. Now, the most interesting part is at the end of their virus symptoms, they were still being tested through nasal swabs and saliva as having like 10 to the 8 parts per million of this virus, still contagious, despite them having fully recovered in the symptoms. So they're now an active non-symptom carrier. And that test, all of that was around about till about 30th of January. That detail from this examination of patient 0 flying in and contaminating people in Germany, flying out again, and not presenting the entire time. Yeah. So it shows, Mickey, to me, this being an ineffectual way of containing the virus by using the thermometers on the forehead and saying, well, you can't pass here because you've got symptoms. But you're contagious if you have the virus, whether you're showing symptoms or not, and having recovered from the virus itself.
Yeah,
if we had to make a virus, you'd tick that box too. I didn't even know it was a tick box. You create a virus that has a gestation period, and then it's got a period where it's contagious, and then I didn't know that you could make it contagious even after you've had it.
Yes, incubation though, gestation is more related to pregnancy.
I'm sorry, yes,
but having said that, no, it's all good. But you're correct. The insidious side of this particular virus, and it's a virus, not a bacterium, is the fact that it is completely asymptomatic, meaning you are contagious, right? You are ready to infect others without having presented with symptoms. Like so the disease has not taken a hold of you. You know, your body's not even fighting it yet, because a fever would indicate that your body is fighting. It's not happening. And you are absolutely correct. And they found it in a little girl as well, that she was infectious but not sick. Okay, and it's really interesting. There are several responses to this. So the response of only quarantining sick people, of course, is completely ineffectual and completely pointless. Actually, yeah. What some countries have done, and I'm not sure if UK has done it, and the US as well. I think British Airways has stopped all flights, and I think no more flights are allowed into the US either from Wuhan. I don't know if they're going to extend it to all of China. I don't know.
And where are they accepting it from residents only?
Well, with the funny things with Australia, we have some 600, I think, people in Wuhan specifically, or Hubei province anyway. And we are bringing them back, which is good. That's what the countries should do. Other countries are doing it as well. But we are going to put them into Christmas Island, our offshore detention center. It's like, think of it as a leper colony. Like we're going to put them there.
It's free, right? Surely it's free. We're going to fly them out of there.
Yeah, apparently not. It's like being put on Schindler's List. You know, Schindler's. I mean, they made the movie, but in actuality, because Schindler is a real person, right? In actuality, people were charged to be put on the list, right? So it wasn't quite as rosy as it was portrayed in the movie. And this is the same. So it's $1,000, I think.
I was going to say, how much would you expect to pay to be flown out of a country by your country?
I'd pay that.
$1,000.
I would pay it absolutely to get out. Of course I would. And that's what they think, you know. Well, the Australian government is thinking, we can't really make a quick buck, but at least we're not going to be out of pocket. That's what they're thinking.
There you go, right? So,
but
Mickey,
real questions there.
I'm just going to throw this out, tinfoil hat. What if they lived in a marginal seat and they were involved with some kind of sporting community? They could get a grant.
They could get a grant. That's right.
Pity she just quit, because Bridget would have been able to cash them up.
Oh, but lucky.
with 340 people who have totally recovered, apparently, they're still contagious.
Correct. So this is really where it gets very difficult, right? It's a bit like, well, does that mean that everybody is going to get this thing eventually, and we'll all have it and all carry it? I don't know. Potentially, maybe. Will it change? Will it lessen? The projected time to vaccine is now 15 weeks. Last week it was 16, so 15 weeks to vaccine. There are no antivirals available as far as I know at this point. So vaccine 16 weeks away. by 16 weeks or 15 weeks now, most of this would have been done and dusted. We did, I think it's no longer any point in it. SARS was well surpassed by the numbers we're seeing, the official numbers, not the numbers that we're going to talk about in a moment. MERS was of course worse, but the numbers were also not quite as bad. So it's interesting. The official numbers we're talking about. The real numbers, I think, is something very different.
So, Mickey, there was the latest update too, from 1 minute ago, was the coronavirus has now killed someone in the Philippines. That was apparently a person who'd flown from Wuhan into the Philippines.
That is correct.
And they've passed away now.
Yeah, a 44-year-old Chinese man. That's right. Yeah. Just now, the very first death outside of China. So I'm sure there's some others to follow. We can only hope for the best here. So,
hey, hang on, this is going to be like one of those, steak knife commercials, Mackie. But that's not the worst of it. Just when you think the coronavirus was all there was to contend with, what do we have now? Announced?
Yes, the avian flu.
H5N1, bird flu, has now been reported in China's Hunan province.
That's correct.
But what?
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, so now there's multiple viruses.
Yeah.
But I think we're set up now to worry about it, right? We've got all the suits, and we've basically purchased every mask on the whole planet. And we've got those little handheld things. We can deal with this, surely.
It's a bad situation. And anybody thinking that China has any hand in this is foolish, because the country that suffers the most right now and into the near future is going to be China. The economic impact of this is actually, at this point, beyond calculation. I will explain to you very quickly why. So, what we've just entered is the year of the rat. Last weekend was the Chinese New Year festivities. Usually, you can compare it to New Year and Christmas rolled into one, right? It's a period of a couple of weeks. People take off. And 3 or 4 days of actually public holidays, maybe longer in certain areas. But the point is, it's massive, and there were billions of journeys planned across China during this time. So train, bus, plane, all that stuff to go home to share a meal with your family. This is the time to spend with your family, and a lot of workers in China actually travel quite a bit. They commute long distances and even live in other cities to work and then go home for special occasions, weekends and such, right? So this is the biggest travel, the biggest celebration time in China, bar none. And so you say, so what? Well, China is hurting. That's a tick in the box economically, but and I want to give you the impact on us here in let's call it the West. Our seafood industry in Australia is close to collapsing, because this is the time when lobsters and abalones and prawns are purchased by the Chinese massive amounts. But all the festivities are cancelled, so all the orders were cancelled, right? So there are a lot of fishermen and seafood suppliers that will not emerge from this successfully.
I'd never considered that. Wow, that's extraordinary.
So that's the small component. Also, the government has actually shut down the factories, all factories. It is Chinese government factories for Tesla, for BHP, for BlueScope Steel, and any other factories that are producing, and Chinese factories too, right? But all these factories are shut down, okay, not producing, because people should stay away from public transport, from gatherings and such. So it's all shut down. So the knock-on effect on us is going to be significant as well, because our earnings are directly affected.
Oh, I'm going to guess the music has started, Mickey.
Oh, okay.
Or thereabouts. All right. We'll catch you after the break, guys. Thank you. Don't worry. I'll do it. Thank you, SJ. You're back with David Mackey, Shiny Sat Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5, that's US dollars, per month. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, well, welcome aboard. This is a tinfoil hat zone, so keep your arms within the vehicle, turn off your personal reality inverters, and no flash photography, please. We're glad you're on board, so thank you for inviting us into your lives. So follow, subscribe, or otherwise for the appropriate social media platform. We're halfway through show number 411. Mackey's silent. Well, 111, well, 110 and 400, I suppose. And we're talking about biological weapons. And so we want you to get yourself some merchandise from the station's website, possibly an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents, seed packs, or whatever it is, and even the current promotions are available. Just follow the instructions carefully and ensure that you understand your customs laws and you don't make the mistake of buying a seed pack and you live in a country that you can't import seeds from. So, or you can't import them to. Thank you very much. And yes, I'm aware that currently the archives aren't working, but they will be up and running at some point in the future. So the archives currently only contain shows prior to the station's move. But anyway, having said that, it's back to the show. Now we're talking about biological weapons, Mackie.
Yes, we are indeed. And I do apologize if you can hear some background noise. That's actually rain. It's coming down like cats and dogs here. At the moment, there's a big thunderstorm.
Ooh, cool.
So, can you hear that at all in the background?
No, not at all.
Okay, that's good. Good. Yeah, look, let's get very quickly into the actual text. We've already set the scene. We are talking about biological weapons. We talked about this last time 300 shows ago, so 2014-ish, right?
Wow.
Roughly. Now, population reduction, right? This is the name of the game. People don't believe it. I've looked a lot at Agenda 21. There's nothing specific in Agenda 21 that would call, to population reduction. There's a lot of innuendo around it, and we're going to talk about the viability of populations on the planet, what people believe we can sustain sustainable populations on planet Earth. But let's talk about population reduction for a second in another context as well. So, sure, you say, the conspiracy to kill off the vast majority of us. Well, that's BS. That's what you think. It's okay. It's okay to think that, right? But some of you probably don't think that. Someone would have blown the whistle. Someone would know. Even with all the compartmentalization Dave and Mackie talk about. Sure. Pyramidal power structures, blah, 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 blah. Somebody would have blown the whistle. Somebody would have said something, right? That's what you think. Fair enough. Now, we, the Shiny Side Out, that is, believe that the reduction in population may be necessary because at a certain point we could reach critical mass. We just finished the hypothesis show cycle, so hopefully you do know what I'm talking about. We like to call it the awareness cascade, the critical mass. We believe once the human race, the human population has reached a certain number, we automatically ascend. Or rupture. You can call it rupture if you're a Christian. That's the same kind of concept. Or an ascension, if that's more your beat. If you're off that bend, it could be called an ascension. A critical number of us that trigger the transcendence event. Hence, the culling is necessary to prevent that event from happening and to keep us here in this particular quantum decoherence. I got quantum in there somehow, shoved it in sideways. But where's the hard evidence that something is covered up? Where's the hard evidence that anything is going on? You can't give us that, Mackie and Dave, can you? That's what I thought. Well, whoa, did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard
that was
that
thunder. Okay then. Well, between 2000 and now pretty much, this was back in 2014, but it still holds true, well over 100 microbiologists have been killed under suspicious circumstances. Now, so what? People die all the time. Yeah, but if you've got... It's a fairly small subgroup of the human race,
it is.
Microbiologists, right? and to have 100 in a relatively small amount of time die under suspicious circumstances or have them killed or anything like that, like even murdered, right? That raises an eyebrow or two, because a microbiologist, of course, if you're a microbiologist, then you run the chance of infecting yourself with some pathogen. Of course, absolutely, 100%. And some people die all the time, right? But being murdered or suiciding, things like that.
Yeah, accidenting.
Accidenting, that's right. That should raise a little interest, right? Really? Shouldn't it? It should.
You
should
can
just
also
accept
lock them
that
up in prison, Mackie. That's another thing.
No,
that's a thing.
but that's no good. That's no good. That's no good, right?
Well,
because then you go, why are you there?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's true. But there was a couple, husband and wife team, I believe, that were working in Canada who shipped the coronavirus to Wuhan laboratories.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and you can Google it. There's a story. The story is out there, and they have been jailed under suspicion of something, some kind of wrongdoing, which isn't known yet. What their wrongdoing actually was. Apparently, they followed all the right procedures too, in containing it. So it was the actual virus, whether they'd created, nCoV 2019, or that's the current one, or it was a disarmed older version or something is unknown.
So if those guys are, if there is a thing, and these people are involved, they're going to suicide very soon.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Or they're shot while fleeing. What happened? Oh, he was resisting arrest. He's already in prison. He was resisting being in prison.
So Mackie, MH17 was one of the giant causes of a loss of a lot of microbiologists.
No, that's correct. Also Ebola.
That's
right. That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Now, but should we just accept that these microbiologists' deaths are unrelated and coincidental? Sure we should. Just like Building 7 collapsed by itself. Now, who is the crazy tinfoil head wearer? Right?
Oh, I am.
There's only one crazy conspiracy theory here, right? And I remember this very clearly. There was this moment, and I'm going to talk about 10-12 here. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like it matters anymore. The people said we shouldn't. Bush Jr. said this within hours of the attack. We should not listen to any crazy conspiracy theories about this, that, and the other.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
But it quickly emerged that the only crazy conspiracy theory for that one was that there were 19 Arabs, and they were Arabs from Saudi Arabia. There wasn't a single Afghani on the plane.
That's right.
No Iraqis, no Iranians, no Syrians. They're all Saudis, with the exception of one, I think. So that the 19 of these guys with the box cutters managed to get into the most secure airspaces on the planet. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
Right. That's important to know. It's
no red flags there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we just have Paul Hovey on the line here as well, and
absolutely.
I think it's a Skype messenger, and he's just talking about the global stock markets. We will talk about that, Paul. But you're correct. You're 100% correct, Paul. This will have a massive effect on the global stock markets, and it'll smash them, as you so eloquently put it.
We saw a 2.4%. Was it Thursday overnight? Yeah.
We haven't seen the knock-on effects yet at all.
I don't think so.
So people still have stock, still trade. Once you run out of stuff, that's when you can see the impacts. Now we have the partial list of these dead microbiologists a little further down in the show notes, with the most interesting cases, it's a fairly comprehensive list. Now I want to lead us into this with a quote from Malthus. Thomas Malthus, I should say, lived 200-300 years ago. Was a religious man, but also economist. He was a census taker, not a census taker. Yeah, I think he was a census taker initially, but he had a whole bunch of ideas and theories. But one of the things that he was quite influential, and he influenced certainly Charles Darwin and others as well in his thinking. Because back then, about 300 years ago, people believed that society was perfectible. We could perfect society to a point where everybody could live in a virtual utopia. That was the general prevailing thought, because God clearly wouldn't have created something that couldn't be perfected, right? It's just the lack of humans that keeps us from that perfection. Malthus, though, said that humans' unquestionable urge to reproduce would ultimately lead us to overpopulate the planet, eat up all its resources, and die in a mass famine. So this is the Malthusian argument. If
When
you
when
have
was
heard of
this?
Thomas,
When was it?
about 300 years ago, Thomas
He was
Malthus. Yeah,
spot
he was. No, he was completely, absolutely spot on. But again, he was not. He was not in line with the zeitgeist, right? So he died 1834. He's born 1766, right? So 1766, born 1834.
Today he'd be accidented.
Yeah, the demographer. That was the, he was a demograph. So he was an English economist and demographer. He's also a cleric, an English cleric.
Huh.
But yeah, so a smart guy, and he saw it very clearly. He saw it. He could see it coming, right? People are people. It's there's another great quote which I will give you guys later on greed, but it's certainly in fact I'll give it to you now, but we'll read it again later. Gandhi was maybe right when he said this: the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And I think that is 100% spot on. But Dave, now, this is a very recent scientific study. Oh, sorry, it's an amalgamation, a report on a number of studies. In fact, I think it's like crazy how many studies. I think 40 or 50 studies here that are amalgamated in this little piece of information.
Goodness. And
this was taken from the science.org.au, so it's the science page in Australia. And it's how many people can Earth actually support? If you want to take us through some of that.
Yeah, completely. It's no surprise as the world's population continues to grow, the limits of essential global resources such as potable water, fertile land, forests and fisheries are becoming more obvious. You don't have to be a maths whiz to work that out. On the whole, more people use more resources and create more waste. But how many people is too many? How many of us can Earth realistically support? Influenced by the work of Thomas Malthus, carrying capacity, in inverted commas, can be defined as the maximum population size an environment can sustain indefinitely. Debate about the actual human carrying capacity of Earth dates back hundreds of years. The range of estimates is enormous, fluctuating from 500 million, as in the Georgia Guidestones, to more than 1 trillion. Scientists disagree not only on the final number, but more importantly about the best and most accurate way of determining that number, hence the huge variability. Estimates of Earth's carrying capacity, one study says 2 billion, but that's 6 studies say that, 7 studies say 4 billion, 20 say 8 billion, which we're almost at, by the way. 14 studies say 16 billion, 6 say 32 billion, 7 is 64 billion. Now, there's only 2 studies that say 128 billion. There's only 1 that says 256 billion, only 1 again that says 512 billion, and only 1 that says, well, that's 1 trillion. That's 1,024 billion.
But you know what? Did you just notice something? 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64,
That's
128,
right.
265, 1,000. This is the base 8.
That's right.
Right. So what?
That's crazy.
Because isn't it though? Is this coincidence or is someone having a little joke here? Right? I don't know.
But what's funny, Mickey, is the middle of the chart here with the maximum amount of votes, I suppose, from a study's perspective, findings is 8 billion.
Yeah, in fact, it is. Yeah, you're right. 8 billion with the most studies, and then if you want to bring to normalize things, the ideal number seems to be between 4 and 16 billion.
That's
and
right.
Then we get outliers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, I completely. It's a skewed normal distribution, which is interesting, but it's skewed toward the lower, sort of lowish end. Certainly, if you consider a trillion, the one end, right, it is skewed massively to the left as far as a normal.
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. For anything 64 billion
curve.
and down, that's right. I know.
Correct.
So look.
So that's it. But the trillion intrigues me. I want to drill down and find that study. I really do.
I'm wondering just how, if we're at only 7.7 billion or thereabouts, right? How many square meters per person? I mean, does that exceed the per square meters for a chicken? I'm wondering, because that's a lot of people.
Maybe it's a shrink.
Right. I don't know. Maybe it's a square yard or a square meter per person. Look, it's a little unsettling considering that as of September 2017, the global population was sitting around 7.5, or right now it's around about 7.78 billion. And it's still continuing to grow by around 80 million people per year. But that's climbing exponentially. As we get more people, the more people are born and perish, but it's still going up. But whether we have 500 million or a trillion, we still have only one planet, which has a finite level of resources. Considering our population will continue to rise for some time, how do we accommodate everyone? Remember, we need steel for everybody, right? We need aluminium for everyone. We need plastic for everyone. At the moment, we need oil, we need copper, we need all these things, lithium. We need all of these things to keep living as we are now. So the answer comes back to resource consumption. People around the world consume resources differently and unevenly. An average middle-class American consumes 3.3 times the subsistence level of food, and almost 250 times the subsistence level of clean water. We just flaunt water use here. It's crazy, right? So if everyone on Earth lived like a middle-class American, for instance, then the planet might have a carrying capacity of around 2 billion. However, if people only consumed what they actually needed, then the Earth could potentially support a figure much higher. But we need to consider not just quantity, but also quality. Earth might be able to theoretically support over 1 trillion people, but what would their quality of life be like? Would they be scraping by on only the bare minimum of allocated resources, or would they have the opportunity to lead an enjoyable and full life? Perhaps Gandhi was right when he said the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Considering that people in developed westernized countries are not only the highest consumers of all resources, but also the largest producers of waste, it might be time to take stock of our own consumption patterns and consider what part we can play in ensuring the healthy future, not only for Earth, and that's the least of people's thoughts, but everyone on it. Maggie, in the last 2 years, we've seen in Australia, we've seen the ABC Chaser guys examine really closely the kind of waste we produce.
Mm-hmm. It's
and
not
has
a pretty
put
picture.
that into our minds.
Oh yeah.
The big ocean islands of plastic components, right? Plastic bits grinding away, causing their own islands and their own, liquid subclimate beneath the waves because it makes shade. These things are a thing, right? And I think we've become more conscious of it. Go back 15 years, and I don't think we would have had any thought of this.
No, not at all. In fact, go back 100 years, it would have been, well, the Earth is ours to consume. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like I said, Thomas Malthus, Thomas Robert, I think his name is. Thomas Malthus said, he was one of the few who said, no, we got to curb our consumption here. This is not good. It's not going to get better, right? And we're going to consume ourselves out of house and home, which is completely accurate. But he was alone in thinking that. Like I said, everybody then still thought, no, everything. This is, non-diminishing returns.
That's right.
This will go on forever. This is a planet with infinite resources. Because everybody thought, well, God would have made it that way, right? God would have. Having said that, though, this is something that it sort of came to my mind just now. In the mid-90s was big, early to mid-90s and late 90s a little bit. Now it's completely dropped off the radar, completely. You try to Google it. But do you remember the phrase peak oil?
Yes.
Okay, so peak oil was meant to be the point at which we are now consuming more oil than we pump out. And it is no longer viable for us to have oil because there simply isn't enough oil to pump up from the earth. That was called peak oil.
That's right.
That was then. But that time came and went. There's no peak oil never happened, right? Because we kept finding new reserves. We found ways to extract, I guess, less lucrative oil or less easily extracted oil. So peak oil never happened. Now, with that argument, you could say, oh no, surely we will find something else that will save our bacon next time. Well, some things, it's highly unlikely that we be able to get out of. Water, this is a big one, fresh water, right? It's in short supply today. And the freshwater sources are drying up. They are going away, right? The biggest freshwater reserves in the world are drying up.
Except for that lake in Russia.
And Lake Baikal, Lake Victoria, all of them. Every last one of them, okay? The artesian, the aquifers are drying up.
Oh,
and you know what the funny thing is?
Nestle.
There's a report. There was a guy who knows what he's talking about, who recently made a documentary, and I was fortunate enough to listen to it. And what he said was, we have a big problem here with the drought in Australia. So what's the problem with the drought in Australia? Well, the problem with the drought in Australia is it's affecting permanent rivers. There are two types of water courses, two main types. One is a permanent river, which is fed by underground water, okay?
Yep.
And that's usually fairly permanent until the underwater sources dry up. It usually comes from the mountains.
Like
anyway,
springs.
That's a permanent river. Bingo. And then there's the rivers that are they're dependent upon downpours and precipitation and so forth, right? And they're seasonal. They can be seasonal rivers, but they can be quite long-lived, especially with meltwater or maybe rainfalls and all that. So these are the rivers that ebb and swell quite a bit. It could even completely disappear in Australia, right? But what he said is, the ones that we're losing are not just the seasonal rivers and waterways. We are losing the permanent rivers. That people need to look at. And the reason for this is damming. Industry is damming things. And they're also pumping up groundwater, which used to feed these rivers. So we are the makers of this drought. This is not some kind of a natural event. It's exacerbated. But we are the direct cause of the droughts that are affecting many waterways in Australia.
You're right.
Human beings.
Completely. Right? So if humans were a swarm of mosquitoes and we only had one place to live and that was a large human, and that's all we had, if that's all we had, there is only a finite amount of material that we can consume to perpetuate our species until it's a dry husk, right? And quite dead. This I'm using a lot of license there. Now, this is that situation, but what are we doing about it? Well, we just let the big bottlers. That's all I'm going to say. I did mention a brand earlier, but I'll be quiet. The big bottlers are given licenses to, signing agreements or policy in which they can just consume as much groundwater as they can readily pump. I know up on the Central Coast we have a bottling plant up here that does a specific brand of bottled water, and that comes from between the Hawkesbury River all the way from Penrith area all the way across to the Central Coast, which is like 70 kilometres. That's an aquifer, and they've been pumping it now to the point where all of the local farmers that were using that water can't drill down far enough to get to it. And yes, Mekki, it is our problem. We created it. Yep. We've created it. We've allowed it to occur. And now when we're crying that we don't have it, who do we turn to, since we're the ones who allowed it?
Well, it's the politicians yet again in big industry, and it's the farmers and the population that are suffering. In Australia, we have now got townships, cities, towns, not big ones, but sizable enough, that are facing the end of water. They are running out of water.
There's
quite
90,
literally. There's
90
yeah
towns that won't have any more water.
No water. Bingo. And you have to ship it in, you have to do something, or you have to just abandon your home and move somewhere where there's water. And that's it's not Africa. We're not talking about Africa here, right? We're talking about the poor parts of Asia. This is Australia, for all intents and purposes, a first world nation that is or we call ourselves that. That's good for us, I guess. But we're not, by definition, we're not though. We are at best a second world nation because we are we are primary producer of both foodstuffs and resources, minerals and such. So we have a very little heavy industry.
So Mickey, with the changing of the Earth's climate and the rising of the sea levels, you might think for a second that rising sea level that'll give more fresh water or more water out to the majority of Australia, right? Surely, but no. What it does is it adds salt to that groundwater as the rising salinity increases the water table from the inbound ocean water, not having touched the top of the land, still within all those cavities beneath the country, is actually affecting it.
So this is the funny thing as these meltings are happening. So you're decreasing the salinity of the ocean water, which is bad, but you're increasing the salinity of the fresh water near the ocean. So it's a double whammy, because right now it's fresh water. So fresh water just means there's a very low salt content. When I say salt, I'm talking about sodium chloride, right? That's the salt I'm referring to, and not mineral salts or any other minerals that are good for you. And if you can't have too much of it, it'll kill you, right? It'll just draw all the moisture out of your body and you die. But essentially, what it means is that our water supply is continually being eroded. It's being eroded to the point of where water wars, which were starting to be touted back in the 80s, and people wrote books about it, are becoming a reality. Because at the end of the day, kind of completely. You know what the Saudis have been doing with the money that they have been making from oil? They've been building water purification plants. They've been investing. Yeah, Lex, that's right. They've been investing in water. Why? Because they're a desert people. They know exactly what's important. You know what that is? Water. Without water, you got nothing.
That's right.
Okay. Oil, they don't give a hoot about oil. You just take that black stuff, take it from us. Yeah, you want to pay us money for it? Sweet. And so the number of desalination plants and other, water purification methodologies and methods in Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries is phenomenal, right? That's where they're sinking their money. That's smart. The Chinese are doing the same thing. They're buying up water sources all around the world, not just in Australia, because that's what you do when you're running short on something. One of the James Bond movies had that as a theme. Was it the last one with Daniel Craig? I can't remember. Maybe the one before that. Yeah, the one before the last one. That's right. Where the bad guys, they were buying up land, and they couldn't figure out why they're buying up that particular land, and they're buying it up because there were massive aquifers underneath it.
That's it.
Right? They were trying to secure water sources. So this is a real enough thing. It's now gone into popular culture as an artifact.
Well, Mickey, the head of Nestle said water is not a right. It's not a human right. And that's
amazing, right?
Yeah, that is his argument for being able to bottle it for free and sell it.
I know. It's nuts. Water is not... The air you breathe is not a human right. What? Yeah. It's the same thing. There's no difference in making either statement. It's exactly the same statement you're making here. Water is the stuff of life. You don't have water, you die. Now, see, again, it's the rule of 3 or the rule of 7. I always get it wrong. You can live comfortably without air for 3 minutes, right? You can live without air for 3 minutes. You can live without water for 3 days, depending again on your circumstances, how hot it is, things like that, and 3 weeks without food.
That's pretty much
more or less, right? And it's the rule of 3. And you can see the criticality of both air and water, and we're doing our best to get rid of air and water in a really swift fashion. But by the same token, we're also trying to kill each other much more efficiently and much more cheaply. And I'm going to talk about biological warfare now, Dave, a bit. And it is by far the biggest bang for your buck that you can ever get. Forget chemical weapons, forget nuclear weapons, forget conventional weapons. If you use bacteria, viruses, or fungi to kill or incapacitate someone, which is called germ warfare, biological toxins, infectious agents, things like that. That's if you do that in a war, that is called germ warfare, and we've got examples of that in the past where people actually did do that to each other, not chemical warfare. Yeah, biological weapons, which are also termed bioweapons or bioagents, are living organisms or replicating entities, viruses, for example. But the funny thing is, viruses don't really tick all the boxes for being alive. We can discuss at some other point, but viruses are not actually considered a life form. by some because they don't tick all. They can't replicate on their own. That's one. That's the biggest. Okay, they need, in fact, a host to reproduce or replicate. A virus cannot replicate on its own. A bacterium can, a fungus can, a virus cannot replicate on its own. There's also entomological or insect warfare. It's considered a type of biological weapon. This type of warfare is distinct from nuclear warfare and chemical warfare, of course, which together make up NBC, or back in the olden days it was called ABC, atomic, biological, and chemical, but these days it's nuclear, biological, and chemical. ABC was just, it rolled easier off the tongue than NBC, right? Why can't we just call it atomic? And then all of these weapons are considered weapons of mass destruction, of course. And none of these fall under the term of conventional weapons. And that's primarily due to their massive destructive potential, right? Now, biological weapons may be employed in various ways to gain a strategic or tactical advantage over the enemy, either by threats or by actual deployments. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, and they also may be useful as denial or area denial weapons. What's an area denial weapon? If you make an area uninhabitable, right? You put virus in there or bacteria. That's an area denial weapon. So you can no longer go there. That's what that does. Now the agents may be lethal or non-lethal, and may be targeted against a single individual, a group of people, or even an entire population. They may be developed, acquired, stockpiled, or deployed by nation states or by non-national groups. In the latter case, or if a nation state uses it clandestinely, it may also be considered bioterrorism. Now, the dangerous thing here is this. With biological weapons, they can be engineered, and make no mistake, we're doing that today, to target specific segments of the population. Specific gene carriers. So if you're a member of a certain race or ethnicity, and there's a gene that identifies you, or most of you, that can now be targeted by biological weapons, right? And they can do targeted killings that way. I'm not saying it's easily done, but I'm saying it can be done, and it's going to get worse. Right? They might even be able to engineer weapons that will just kill you, just you. A virus designed just to kill Dave. Imagine that, or bacterium, right? Now, there's an overlap, of course, between biological weapons and chemical warfare, as the use of toxins produced by living organisms is considered under the provisions of both the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention. Toxins and psychochemical weapons are often referred to as mid-spectrum agents. Unlike bioweapons, these mid-spectrum agents do not reproduce in their host and don't necessarily cause death either. Now, that's what biological warfare is. Now, biological warfare, as I said, biggest bang for your buck, and it's also a completely deniable kind of warfare, Dave, because it's a disease, right? Disease.
Put your hands in the air. I didn't do anything.
Oh, it
wasn't me.
What? Just have. I mean, what? What did I do? And this is really an ingenious way of causing great damage, because as we can see already, and we can talk about that just for a second here, if you like, the economic impact that we mentioned earlier from the disease, because people will lock down. If you destroy infrastructure, right, with conventional weapons or nuclear weapons, even chemical weapons, right, and you make it uninhabitable for a long time, that doesn't really help you. If in warfare, still, even in the 21st century, you want to win the land. You want to occupy the land and use the land and use the infrastructure, right? That's really what you want to do. Otherwise, why have war? But if you destroy it or contaminate it, then it's no good. Biological weapons, right? They tend to run their course, especially if they're engineered, right? And once they've run their course, well, they go away. Or even better, you might be able to get vaccines for the things that you've released out there. Are they 100% effective? No, but they're largely effective, which is good enough in cases of war. So you get an enemy's infrastructure completely intact, right, with all the houses and streets and and electronics and whatnot, and everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. Much better than anything chemical, nuclear, or conventional, right? So, in the light of that particular statement, now think about it as psychological warfare as well, right? And we're going to talk about the history of this a little bit later. But if you attack someone outright, they can prepare for it. I mean, okay, there's bullets are flying, the bombs are falling. Okay, there's certain things we can go underground, we can wear bulletproof vests, all these wonderful things, right? A biological agent is much more insidious, especially if it doesn't present any symptoms immediately, and then but then it kills you really rapidly, and in horrific ways. So the psychological impact of disease cannot be underestimated. And I'm not saying that's what's happening in China today. I'm not saying that, okay? I have no evidence for it whatsoever. The only thing I find suspicious, Dave, is the timing of the coronavirus outbreak.
Yeah,
right?
so you could count it as the perfect storm or the black swan event, where it's a cascade
100%.
fault, right? One thing led to another at the wrong time or the right time, and it's turned out to be terribly successful if you were looking at it from that point of view.
100%. If you wanted to hurt China, this is the perfect time, and it's the perfect way of doing it. Because the impact, of course, is number one, you're hurting physically the people, right? That's one thing. But you're hurting the Chinese image, you're hurting the Chinese economy. The knock-on effect is massive. You're hurting China's ability to respond. You're hurting every last interest that China has, and you're hurting China's allies at the same time, or trading partners, right? Because of the diminished economic capacity. Because that's what happens. If you got a disease, things shut down. If you have a conventional war, right? And I'm not talking about like a nuclear war now, right? But the conventional war is usually happening at the front, more or less, right? You have a fighting front, and there might be incursions and bombings, but there's a fighting front. So your economy can still function, more or less, right? People can still go about their business. There's a warning siren, they go in the bunker, and they come out again, do their work, and whatever. So I'm not saying it's a normal way of life, but it can still happen. If you put disease into the mix, people are not going to leave the house. No one is going to go to work. Because you'd be crazy if you did, right? There's a massive psychological impact, even if the death rate isn't that high. But it could be high. I mean, if you've got a pre-existing condition, if you've got a lung disease, if you've got a frail, whatever might be wrong with you, then chances are that you might succumb to a disease. So, in my mind, for my money, I would always bet on biological warfare. If you have the means to control it, if you're the perpetrator. If you don't, then...
So think about the deployment method. It's rather simple, requires very little effort, can be done surreptitiously, and to be honest, Mekki, if you had just a vial of it and you let it go in a crowded place, or you did the thing where you just rubbed it on. I'm just saying. I can imagine if I was writing a book about it, you could rub it on a handrail or something, and you could start it off. It doesn't take. You don't have to go down the street spraying it in the air with aerosols. You don't have to drop it. You don't have to fly over and drop it from a plane. It can just be a visitor. It's just a single person, and you would never see them. Yeah, that's what gets me about biological. Yes, you could drop it from space, right? In a vial, and it would make it intact, right, to the ground. But would you get it where you wanted to get it? Who knows?
Maybe not.
Who knows? You just don't know.
Yep. But
still, if it were weaponized, imagine, Mekki, if this is the craziest idea, right? It's weaponized, but it's created by the Chinese government to spread across the planet, and they're willing to take the initial hit, and then the rest of the planet has to cope with it, right? I'm just saying. Just imagine if that was the scenario. Wow, what a perspective. Makes me think about it.
Oh no, I completely agree, dude.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
So,
but
did you want to speak to the Wuhan?
Nope, that's you.
Oh, awesome. May I commence, sir?
Please.
Thank you. So the Wuhan coronavirus. Now I'm just going to put this back onto the screen. So I'm just going to have that on the screen. I've got the current, the John Hopkins SCSE dashboard up while I'm talking about it. So officially, as of the 2nd of February 2020, more than 300 people have died in the outbreak so far. So the total deaths are 305 right now, but it's probably going to go up tonight. The vast majority from Hubei province, and more than 1,400 people worldwide have been infected so far. But a study group of scientists... 14,000, thank you very much. But a study group of scientists in Hong Kong have modelled the outbreak with data available at this time and have come up with figures that are significantly different from the official figures. So, firstly, what is the coronavirus? The viruses themselves are a large group of viruses that are common amongst animals. In rare cases, they can be transmitted from animals to humans. The spikes protruding from their various membrane look like the sun's corona, which is, it's on our title page. I've got the picture. You're right, it does. It's very interestingly formed and shaped. According to the World Health Organization, a novel coronavirus, or the 2019 nCoV, is a new strain, and that's what novel means, that has not been previously identified in humans. The real number of coronavirus cases is, and we're estimating here, probably likely more than 75,000 people. We've heard estimations coming from within China out saying something like 100,000. Now, but according to the scientific model that says the outbreak will double in size every 6.4 days. And we've seen evidence of this anyway, and there's a graph on the screen that you can look at, and there's the one I provided at the beginning, at the top of the show. Kiran Korsaran has written, the true number of people infected with the deadly Wuhan coronavirus is more than 75,000, according to a scientific model, which claims the official number for those infected is far too low. Academics at the University of Hong Kong published a paper on Friday in The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal, estimating the rate at which the virus is spreading. It used official data on the number of infections to calculate what it said was the true extent of the disease, almost 100 times the official figures. Underpinning the analysis is the idea that the number of international cases is disappropriately high given the number of people who travelled from Wuhan to other countries. The academics used the international figures to reverse engineer a total for the number of cases among Greater Wuhan's population of around 19 million. They said that as of the January 25, they estimated the number of cases was about 75,815. According to CNN, the official total on January 25th for the whole of Hubei province, which includes Greater Wuhan, was 761, barely 1% of the total projected by the scientists. The paper is not the first to suggest that the official figures do not adequately capture the scope of the outbreak. A paper from Imperial College London, published on January 17, suggested the figures were too low by a factor of 35. 35. Despite making, I'm just going to put something in here, that it started around about mid-December, is when cases started to be seen in hospitals within Wuhan. As a part of their model, the Hong Kong academics predicted that the scale of the virus would double every 6.4 days. By that logic, the number of people in Greater Wuhan with the virus as of this Friday would be 151,630.
So that was 2 days ago.
Yeah. The official number of cases on January 31st was less than 10,000. The number increased to around 12,000 as of February 1, and now it's 14,591 official cases. The authors of the study said they had taken into account the effect of the dramatic lockdown imposed by Wuhan and surrounding cities last week. However, they said that its overall effectiveness would be negligible, given that the critical mass of the cases had already been observed in several other cities. Plus, they were letting them out despite them being not presenting with a fever, but still being contagious, as we know now. As we know now. So only presenting those who are only letting pass those persons who were presenting was flawed. and it just looks like you're just letting everybody out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mackie, The Lancet.
Yeah, so this is the actual study. This is the article in The Lancet, I should say, that we talked about. And I'm going to share that with you. So there's a bit of statistics and so forth, but it's only a summary. So this is from The Lancet. Background. Since December 31, 2019, the Chinese city of Wuhan has reported an outbreak of atypical pneumonia caused by the 2019 novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV. Cases have been reported to other Chinese cities, as well as internationally, threatening to trigger a global outbreak, which we now have. Here we provide, and these are the authors, an estimate of the size of the epidemic in Wuhan on the basis of number of cases exported from Wuhan to cities outside mainland China, and forecast the extent of the domestic and global public health risks of epidemics, accounting for social and non-pharmaceutical prevention interventions. The methods they used. We used data from December 31, 2019 to January 28, 2020, on the number of cases exported from Wuhan internationally. Known days of symptom onset from December 25, 2019 to January 19, 2020. To infer the number of infections in Wuhan from December 1, 2019 to January 25, 2020. So they're just trying to, like a reverse engineering kind of thing, right? Cases exported domestically were then estimated. We forecasted the national and global spread of 2019 nCoV, accounting for the effect of the metropolitan-wide quarantine of Wuhan and surrounding cities, which began January 23, 24, 2020. So, a month pretty much after the first cases. We used data on monthly flight bookings from the official aviation guide and data on human mobility across more than 300 prefecture-level cities in mainland China from the Tencent database. Data on confirmed cases were obtained from the reports published by the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Serial interval estimates were based on previous studies of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, which is the SARS-CoV. A susceptible exposed infectious recovered metapopulation model was used to simulate the epidemics across all major cities in China. The basic reproductive number was estimated using Markov chain Monte Carlo methods and presented using the resulting posterior mean and 95% credible interval. So it's like a confidence interval, right? So 95%. So there's an error of plus or minus 5%, essentially. Findings. In our baseline scenario, we estimated that the basic reproductive number for the virus was 2.68, and that 75,850 individuals have been infected in Wuhan as of January 25, 2020. The epidemic doubling time was 6.4 days. We estimated that in the baseline scenario, Chongqing, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen had imported 461, 113, 98, 111, and 80 infections respectively from Wuhan. So each of these cities had that many people come in from Wuhan. It's only in the hundreds. So it's not outrageous, I think. If the transmissibility of the virus were similar everywhere everywhere domestically and over time, we inferred that epidemics are already growing exponentially in multiple major cities of China, with a lag time behind the Wuhan outbreak of about 1 to 2 weeks. Interpretation. Given that the virus is no longer contained within Wuhan, other major Chinese cities are probably sustaining localized outbreaks. Large cities overseas with close transport links to China could also become outbreak epicenters unless substantial public health interventions at both the population and personal levels are implemented immediately. Independent, self-sustaining outbreaks in major cities globally could become inevitable because of substantial exportation of pre-symptomatic cases. So people that not showing any symptoms yet. In the absence of large-scale public health interventions. Preparedness plans and mitigation interventions should be ready for quick deployment globally. The funding was from the Health and Medical Research Fund in Hong Kong, China. So that is the summary of the study that was conducted by the Hong Kong Chinese scientists, Dave. Bit sobering, right? Again, it's not. We're not saying that's the truth, right? We're also not saying we should dismiss it, but we actually have heard. Well, all of us have heard higher numbers coming out of China. Remember that there was a lady there. She was completely covered up in protective gear, and it looked like she was sitting in a hospital room somewhere. And she said there were 90,000 or thereabouts infected in China at that time, which was I think 4 or 5 days ago. I don't know if you recall that. But it's certainly a very sobering kind of analysis and study that was undertaken here. Even with the official numbers, I think we should be cautious and certainly set ourselves up for potentially prolonged stays within our respective habitats. If you've got a house, a flat, whatever, I would probably stay indoors as much as possible if you've got outbreaks near you. Dave, what's your plan?
Thanks for asking, Mekki, because, and I was muted, by the way. you need to do a few things, and I've written the pandemic response from an organization I used to work at, a health fund that I used to work for, and I was part of that. Extraordinary thoughts that no one had, I think, was the situation. So every single contact you go outside, you've got to now consider that you can contract it from everything. Not everyone, everything. So like I mentioned, on a surface here and there, on the shopping cart handle, on the goods that have been placed in and onto the shelves, because the people packing it may have been inadvertently, come to work as like a trooper and say, I'm just going to work anyway, but I know I'm infected with something, and it turns out to be the virus. Then you come home, you wash even the containers that the food has been brought back in. Mekki, when you have a close down, it's very difficult to go shopping.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you prepared in your home to be able to sustain yourself for 2 weeks without leaving the home?
Okay, so very simply put, I always have enough food for about 2 or 3 months. I just do.
There you go.
Right, I got a massive amount of canned food. I've got a massive amount of dried food. Right?
That's it.
I have a large amount of cooking oils and other things, spices, this and that, condiments and so forth. That's all good. I also have large amounts of bottled water. I just have.
That's
just
good. Yep.
Just what. Yeah, and we do have a little 8-liter water tank anyway. That's where we have our filter.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to sustain us for a while. And unless there's a disruption to the water supply, I have my filtered water that would run through the water. I'm also probably 500 meters from the largest water supply in Western Sydney. Fresh water.
Prospect, yeah.
Yep, I have a charcoal and other cooking facilities. Most of my cookware can be used on fire, so I can actually cook it and take it on fire. I have
what about rice and flour?
Meats of I got. Well, my wife's Chinese, so we have lots of rice, and we have a lot of flour as well. And the first thing we would eat is, of course, the things we have frozen. If electricity were to go out, the first things we would eat would be from our fridges. We've got more than one fridge.
Yep.
Simply because of the things we just freeze, food and then use it later.
So a pandemic also has the ability to wipe out infrastructure because people become sick and can't go to work to sustain our infrastructure.
Correct.
So I had 10,000 litres of water. Yeah. I've got enough water to sustain us. We have flour and rice, and we have other things. We have a mixture of dried and frozen meats, which depending on what the situation turns out to be. But I always joke with the kids, what do we eat first, kids? And they say the ice cream.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right.
Well, that's the truth, right? I mean, but having said that, you also have to have means of protection. I suggest. Now, we are lucky in a way because we've got a lot of family and friends living in the immediate vicinity. And when I say immediate vicinity, I'm talking about probably within a 10-minute walk, and then within probably a 20-minute drive and half-hour drive. Oh, music! Oh, yeah. Darn! Come back next week. We're going to talk about more stuff.
Where you'll hear Dr. Bob say, stay tuned for Jer Bear's awesome show, and we'll see you next week, as Mekki said. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and don't become infected.